path is suited for your spiritual evolution? Is it Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, or Gyan Yoga? And why do you need intellect to understand these paths? Who were the first rishis who came to planet Earth? This and so much more in today's episode.
Before the human being is ready to take up any sort of path, he has to be intellectually convinced that this is the right path for him. Our concept of a superior or supreme being should be firmly understood before we can practice any sort of sadhana. They said that exactly on the opposite side of Bharat, there is a sect of people who have a very great culture, and they were referring to the Mayans and the Aztecs.
I'm Palak and you're watching me on the Palakmehtashow. Today my guest is Mata Vanamali ji. Mataji resides in a beautiful ashram called the Vanamali Ashram in Rishikesh in North India. Back in the day, Brahma Rishi Mohanji would visit her here very frequently. Vanamali is one of the names of Lord Krishna, and she is an ardent bhakta of Lord Krishna. Vanamali means the wearer of the garland of wild flowers. Her presence is very soothing, and she is always dressed in lavender, which is the color of Krishna in transcendence. She's authored more than 17 books on the subjects of Hinduism and Hindu gods. She also conducts classes across the world and in her ashram on Santana Dharma and Srimad Bhagavad Gita. If you're new to this channel, click on the bell icon, subscribe to the notifications so that whenever a new video is up, you find out.
Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Vatsangam Mahoraskam, Vanamala Virajidam, Shankachakradharam Devam, Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. I bow to Lord Krishna, the preceptor of the universe. I bow to the charioteer of Arjuna. Hari Om. That's it.
Namaste Ma, thank you so much for gracing us with your divine presence. My first question to you is that Bharat has had distinct spiritual paths such as Bhakti Yoga, Gyan Yoga, Karma Yoga. What is the significance of these paths?
See, the human being is made out of many different layers of personalities. He's got a body, he's got a mind, he's got an intellect. These are the basic layers which we know, which we experience every day. So for that, the stresses of the body, yogasanas, pranayama, all sorts of things like that were recommended. But what about the mind? The mind needs something more. That is, and for that we advised meditation and of course pranayama again. And the intellect has to, but before anything, before the human being is ready to take up any sort of path, he has to be intellectually convinced that this is the right path for him. And that intellectual conviction is given through jnana yoga. So these three are very essential. Jnana first, then we have karma, and of course yogasana and so on for the body, and then we have bhakti, which is for the emotional part of our lives. So all these three, there are many layers of our personality, and the Indian method of sadhana encompassed all these different layers. They didn't leave out any at all. So that the whole individual evolved at the same time. The whole personality evolved. Not just one-sided evolution, but the whole personality blossomed and evolved.
Ma, you mentioned that we need to have intellectual conviction before we choose the path. So is it that the path chooses us or we choose the path?
The intellect will be convinced according to the circumstances in which it has been brought up. So, what happens when the intellect becomes convinced of something which is not really intellectually clear? For instance, the Abrahamic religions, they are convinced intellectually that their God is a very exclusive God, sitting somewhere in the heaven, exclusive to only those who believe in Him. Now, this is not the correct intellectual concept of a God. So our concept of a superior or supreme being should be firmly understood before we can practice any sort of sadhana. So that is why the Gita particularly insists that Jnana Yoga should be understood. We should understand the nature of this supreme being, and we should understand how we are connected to that, and how all three, the human being, nature outside, and that supreme being, how are they all connected together? They are not three, they are totally interconnected. So that understanding has to be firmly fixed before we can take up any path. Because if you suddenly jump into bhakti, as you know the Abrahamic religions do, what happens is it turns into fundamentalism, which is what we see in the world today.
So you mean a profound understanding of God first is very, very important before choosing a path?
So of course, because how can you love? Bhakti means devotion or love for God. How can you love a God or something or some person you don't know anything about? You have to have a very clear picture of that entity that you want to love or you are devoted to. And if that picture is unclear and distorted, in many cases not just unclear, is distorted, then how can any bhakti be which is based on that? Naturally, as I said, it turns into fundamentalism. My God, your God, and they cut up God into different pieces. So what concept do they have of the Supreme Being?
Ji, we've had great rishis and yogis who have walked these paths individually, distinctly, and even independently. So is the culture of Bharat a sum total of all these paths?
Well, we are very fortunate because these rishis, I doubt very much whether they were sons of the soil, to tell you the truth, because at the time when they appeared, humanity was in the state of a very, very, very like a Paleolithic ages or something very distant, which we can't even imagine. And human beings had no sort of ability to think properly, or they were just doing their best to keep themselves alive. And at this stage in Bharat, we were very lucky because these beings, I personally believe that they came from another planet, the seven sages, and after that, of course, many of them came from the soil itself. But the first rishis, I feel, must have come from some other planet. And we are very fortunate that they chose this planet because obviously this country, I don't say planet, this country has a very great part to play in the evolution of the human consciousness of the whole world. That is the role that Bharat has in the whole world, to help in the progress of the human evolution. So they came here and they heard. They were extra 10 sensory beings, extra sensory beings. They were not 5 sensory beings like us. They were, I could say, multi-sensory beings, and they were able to see, hear, touch, and know things far beyond what our senses tell us. And that is why they were able to listen in a state of superconsciousness, in a state of samadhi. They heard these sounds of the hymns of the Vedas. Shruti does not mean that they heard with the physical ears. No. They heard within their hearts because they were in the state of superconsciousness. And that they recorded in their mind and passed it on. That's why it's an oral tradition. They passed it on to their disciples and from there to so all through it is an oral tradition. And they created a caste who were only meant to memorize this oral tradition. Only meant, because the rest of the society had a owed debt to this caste, which is known as the Brahmins. They're not. That is the Varna. It comes to the Varna. They were known as Brahmins, and they were only meant to record this in their memorize, and that's why even today this has come down to us. It's still an oral technique. You cannot learn the Vedas by reading a book. You have to go to Veda Padashala and listen to the teacher, enunciating these Sanskrit mantras, so that by listening to them, that your own inner consciousness seems to evolve. So this is the great thing that they did for us. And as I said, they were not ordinary human beings. They were definitely extraordinary beings. And we are indeed fortunate and so grateful to them. And that is why now I say, if we have a debt we owe to these rishis. We have to keep this culture alive. This dharma which they have given to us, which is of unique importance to the entire human society, of humanity. We have a sort of this is our duty to this, that we should pass it on to the future generation. It has been suppressed and depressed for the past 200 years. Before that, India was a glorious country. But in these 200 years of foreign conquerors and rule, we seem to have lost that. And not only we have lost it, what is it? We have been made to believe that our tradition, let's say 30,000-year-old tradition, was inferior to their Western 2,000-year-old culture. We have been made to believe that. So this has to change. India, Bharat has to change. Our youth has to change. And people like you, your society, and people like you are the ones who should carry on this tradition and know it fully before you start teaching it to others. It's very, very important. Not only important for Bharat, but it's important for the whole world.
Thank you, Ma. You say it with so much clarity. So is this culture of Bharat, is this beautiful culture that Bharat has given us, have we imbibed this into us subconsciously, or is it present globally?
It is actually, it should be there in the whole of humanity. And it was. Before the advent of Christianity, it was. Because the whole of Europe, the whole of South America and so on, North America too, they practice pantheism. Pantheism which brought them very close to nature. And it was only with the advent of Christianity that these beautiful other cultures were totally wiped out, totally. They tried to do it in Bharat also, but fortunately they did not succeed, because ours is not just pantheism, is much more than pantheism. So they were not able to wipe us out, but they wiped it out throughout the whole of Europe. That yearning for the human mind, the yearning for a understanding being which is superior to them and which is in control of the entire cosmos, that yearning is there in every human heart. Unfortunately, as I said, it was suppressed in the rest of the world, especially the South Americans. The Mayans and the Aztecs were highly evolved people. Our Surya Siddhanta, one of the old books in India, very ancient books, they have said this, that on the other side of the world, on the other side of the globe, they knew that the world was round, by the way, even in those times. They said that exactly on the opposite side of Bharat, there is a sect of people who have a very great culture, and they were referring to the Mayans and the Aztecs. So they knew that the world was it was a globe, and they knew of the existence of such a great culture, and they were a very great culture, the Mayans and the Aztecs. And they were totally wiped out by the conquistadors led by Cortez and his group of brutal people who totally decimated them without any idea of what their culture meant. It is a terrible thing.
Right, right. But wasn't Jesus a saint himself? Isn't he independent from Christianity, from what I understand?
Yeah, Jesus actually is supposed to have come to India. There's 14 years, which is a blank in the Bible, in his life, which the Bible doesn't talk about. 14 years in the forest, in the desert, he is supposed to have spent. Where did he spend that? It just said that it's a very obvious that he must have taken one of these Iranian, I forget they were sailors, and came across to India. And it is said that he actually met, according to our tradition, that he actually met Mahavatar Baba, and from whom he learned all the esoteric secrets of our great culture, and after that he went back. Only then, after that, of those 14 years, he came out of the desert and he started his message. But unfortunately, his disciples were all of a very, very poor order. They were fishermen. How much could they understand of what he was talking about? So naturally, the whole thing got distorted. And the very first Bible itself, the very first Bible was written by so-called Saint Thomas. Who was Thomas? Thomas only a worker in the tax-paying department of the Roman Republic, because he was the only one who knew how to write. Therefore, he wrote the first sayings of Christ. How much do you think this poor man would have understood? So it is distorted from the time it was started off, really speaking. And I think that's why Christ did not stay there anymore. And in the end it is said that when he was so-called resurrection was not a resurrection at all. He never died. So when he came alive, after 3 days they revived him, and he became he was okay, and he came back to India. And there is still his tomb is to be found in Kashmir.
Aren't these Maharishis and yogis, are these great saints present with us today?
They're always present, and they're always ready to help us, because they were such compassion for humanity. That's why they gave us so many methods by which every human being could somehow follow that and get to the fulfillment of his human life by following they gave many methods, not just one. They never said there's only one path and one way to heaven. They never said that. Many paths and many ways, because every individual is different. So you cannot say that you can only follow one path. So they gave many paths. So definitely I feel very sure that they are there, especially the modern sages and saints who have just passed away, like Shirdi Sai Baba and Ramana Maharshi and so many like that. They are ever there. They can be invoked at any time, and they are ever ready to help humanity, because the greatest thing was the great compassion they had for humanity. Having escaped from this terrible samsara sagara, they were so anxious that the rest of humanity should also come to that stage of being which is blissful, truly blissful, not just happy. It was blissful. So they loved humanity so much. They wanted to raise us up to that level. So definitely they are still in the ecosphere somewhere. In some way or other, they can be contacted, and they are still definitely helping Bharat. Otherwise, Hinduism would have perished like all the other, pantheistic religions perished in all of Europe and all over the Americas also.
As an extension of what you said, Ma, Mohanji had mentioned that there are 33 crore dimensions in each human. But isn't the concept of polytheism misunderstood by us?
3 crores of gods is what the Hindu theism says. There are 3 gods. So there are probably dimensions of consciousness. There are different dimensions of consciousness. So there must be existing. There must be, even now there must be existing, I'm sure. Because this 33 crores of gods is just a kind of an exaggeration which is always prone to all Hindu texts. Somehow we have a huge imagination and we never gave the basic scientific truths underlying all this. Because at that time when these truths were said, nobody would have understood them. Even today people can't understand. In fact, only after the advent of quantum physics that we can even understand what the rishis meant by saying, this word you see is Maya. So naturally they did not give the scientific explanation about it. They gave it in form of stories, fables, and all sorts of illustrations. So these 33 crores of gods which I talk about are also different dimensions of the mind, different dimensions of consciousness which can be attained by the human being.
Absolutely. So each individual essentially realizes God in different dimensions.
Yes, definitely. Because our Swadharma, as Krishna himself said, is according to our Swabhava, our personality trait. And that will prompt us to do what type of dharma is most suited for us. Our Swadharma should be ordained by our Swabhava. That's the beauty of Hinduism. It's not that everybody is given one dharma, no. There is, of course, a universal dharma, but then we all have our individual swadharmas, which will be colored by our own swabhava or our personality traits.
How beautiful, Ma. Lord Krishna has had a great significance in the basic fabric of Bharat. Could you please throw more light on this?
Well, the 2 avatars, we have 2 human avatars. We have only 2 human avatars which we know, that is Rama and Krishna. And both of them had a tremendous impact on the Hindu culture, on the culture of Bharat, as you know. Both Rama and Krishna, we should not only limit to Krishna, but Rama, what an impact he has had on the culture of this country. And they were both human beings, and they lived and trod upon this holy land of Bharat. Up and down, Rama has walked all from Ayodhya right up to the Sri Lanka, as you know. And Krishna again. Krishna has there was a difference in their personalities. Both had a special, vital role to play. The Rama belonged to the Surya Vamsha, and they were the kings of a very high moral order, very high. They clung to dharma, even at the cost of their own lives, even at the cost of their own happiness. There's no question of whether there was no choice for them, whether my happiness or somebody else's happiness, or the duty I owed to the public, or the duty I owe to humanity. So they always chose the other rather than their own. Now that is Rama's role, to show how high a person who's following the dharmic ideals how high he can go, how much he can sacrifice. Now Krishna's role was different. Krishna belonged to the Chandra Vamsha, which they were a totally different type of temperament. He believed that when our dharma, of course Rama also believed that, when our dharma is at stake, when our dharma is being challenged by contrary types of dharma, it is our dharma to protect it. We have the duty to protect that dharma. If we do not do that, we will be trampled upon. We will be squashed as we are being done now. And this is a time when every Hindu should rise up and decide that we will fight for our dharma, because even though these people say, oh, Hindu terror and rubbish like that, where has the Hindu ever retaliated? They have to say, but we have been killed, indiscriminate killing of the Hindus. There was no Holocaust as big as the one which went on in Bharat from the 600 years ago. It has been such a terrible criminal action which has been going on. Even now it's going on. The other day somebody went into a temple in Karnataka just last month and slaughtered the priests. And what did the Hindus do? They did not retaliate. That is not the correct way to protect our dharma. We have to do something about it. I'm not saying that we should retaliate in the way that these people retaliate, but we have to fight for our dharma. We have to at least educate our young generation what it is, what it means to be a Hindu, to make them proud of their culture, make them proud of this, of their nation. We have to write a new narrative. This narrative of this country has been lost, has been squashed upon. A new narrative has to be built, so that our children learn to be proud what it means to an Indian. What it means to be an Indian means what it means to a true human being.
Yes, in fact, a lot of people of our generation are very apologetic sometimes about our culture. So, has our tradition been misunderstood?
Now, as I tell you, you have to inculcate this essence of Hinduism in our young people, and to understand if you do not protect your mother, she will be killed by those who think their mother is superior to your mother. Would you like to have them do that? Because that is what, there is a tremendous movement going on, breaking India. Breaking India. And how can India be broken? By breaking Hinduism. Because Bharat means Hinduism. Bharat means the Sanatana Dharma. If the Sanatana Dharma is broken, there will be no Bharat anymore, my dear. You must understand that. Let the younger generation realize that. And it's high time. We have just taken this lying down for too long. What was Krishna's advice to this thing? Where he told Arjuna, when it's your duty to see that your dharma is being squashed, is destroyed by these tyrants, then you have to stand up for it. It's the duty of every Kshatriya to stand up for that and fight for his dharma. Unfortunately, today we have no Kshatriyas left in the Hindu fold. We have all become Vaishyas. We want only money. In olden times, why were the Brahmins, why were they worshipped? Even the kings would stand up. When even a small, wizened up old Brahmin wearing only a loincloth came into the court of the king himself would rise up. Because at that age, we worshipped knowledge, true knowledge, wisdom, and beauty of character. Today, we worship only money. Ambani or somebody, if he comes, every single politician here will rise up and touch his feet. This is how we have degenerated. Today we are a Vaishya society. We are no longer either Brahmin society nor Kshatriya society. That is the pity of it. So we must go back to that, to understand, appreciate that India has something to offer much more than money. We have something to offer which will bring up the whole of the human race to the fulfillment of what it means to be a human being. Here we have degenerated to the fulfillment of what it means to be an animal.
Krishna has gifted the world with the most powerful thesis, which is of Bhagavad Gita. You're a great exponent of Bhagavad Gita. How would you explain or introduce the Gita to somebody who knows nothing about it?
You cannot explain it. You can make them listen to some of the talks or something. It's better than just reading it. Just reading it will only it will give to misunderstanding, lead to misunderstanding. You should either listen to talks and to explanations of the Gita, and then you will have to understand that this is a practical teaching. It's not something like, we have produced many great literature in this world, in India, the Vedas, the Upanishads, and so on. But Gita has the power to tell, he has told us the way to live every minute by minute, how to practice this great culture in our day-to-day lives. That is the greatness of the Gita. So it has to be understood, and you have to encourage them to practice it. Because whenever I give talks on the Gita, I keep on reiterating this. This has to be practiced. And the Gita Acharya himself, of all the 18 chapters, how does he end it? Brahma Vidya Yoga Shastra. It is a Brahma Vidya, that means the knowledge of the Supreme. But it is immediately, he says, it is also a Yoga Shastra, how to practice that knowledge, how to bring that knowledge of the Supreme into our daily life. Every day, minute by minute, daily life. This is the glory of the Gita. And so that has to be made very, very clear to the student of the Gita. That is not just a scripture to be read and kept away reverently and put a few flowers on top of it. No. It has to be practiced daily in your daily life. That is what is most important about the Gita. And then, I assure you, 100%, I give you a surety, your whole life will change. If you practice what he has said in the Gita, you will find that your whole life changes. I'm not saying that your life is going to be a bed of roses. Far from it. You may have to fight many Mahabharata wars within yourself and outside yourself. But I'm telling you, your whole life, your outlook on life will change. And that's the most important thing. Because life is never going to change. Life is always a duality. The world is a world of duality. Happiness, unhappiness, evil, good, dark, and day. These will remain. You cannot change that. But your approach to that, your attitude to that will change if you start practicing the Gita. It's not something which can be practiced only about, say, like half an hour every day. No. That's why the Vanamali essays on the Gita is called Nitya Yoga. Nitya means constant. The yoga of constant communion, it's called. That's what I've realized. The Gita is a yoga of constant communion. You are to keep in touch with that Supreme constantly, every minute, every second of the day. Like you keep your smartphones with you all the time, night and day even. Some people keep it under their pillow, so the last thing they see at night is that phone. And the first thing they see in the morning is what is happening in that phone or everywhere else. This is not the way that life is meant to be lived. The last thing you should think of is of that Supreme Being who has done so much for you. Thank Him with all your heart for what He has done. And then go to sleep, you will get a far better sleep. Then the first thing you think in the morning again is of that Supreme Being. And what you are going to do, what are the things that you can do for Him and because of Him. These are the things you should think about. Just as you are addicted to that smartphone, you should get addicted to that Supreme Being which is reigning in your hearts all the time. And because of which you are alive now, because of which you are asking these questions now, and because of which I am answering you now.
Thank you so much, Ma. This was a huge blessing, and you answered to so many questions.
Even the unasked ones.
Even the ones
I'm
which were
really
unasked.
grateful for
So
this
thank you so much.
Thank you, dear. I'm very happy because my whole life, I think I feel that only if I can arouse a spark in some heart, in some young heart, of the Indian youth, I would have played my part in this life. Because you are the ones who should be, that spark should be ignited in all of you, so that you are filled with a desire to promote this culture, to show your gratitude to those rishis who have given us this culture, to make the future generations realize that this is the greatest culture ever produced in the world and will ever be produced in the world. That is your duty. And I'm so happy that people like you are there who are taking up making such an effort, because it shows that a change is happening in this Indian Hindu society, which is very, very necessary. Thank you so much. And God bless you. Hari Om. Hari Om. God bless.
Her energy is infectious, and you have to agree with me that her passion is truly, truly moving. Now, I'm not against any religion at all, but I do definitely believe that we have to do way more to protect the most ancient culture which has been gifted to the planet, which is Santana Dharma. If you like this episode, please comment below, share, subscribe to my channel, and share your thoughts with me. I'll see you again soon with another fascinating episode on the secrets of India.
ॐ सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति